We're doing a tier list of all the Commander cards that used to be super relevant, but are not so much anymore.
I'm Mia, and I like going to bed at 2 a.m. or later.
I'm BZ, and I only play cards in the last 2 years of Magic, and we're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Dragon Shield. They got the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
You can head over to the EU or the US links that we've provided for you in the description to go buy sleeves straight from the source while supporting the channel at the same time for no extra money.
We're also sponsored by Moxfield.com, the best place online to build a deck. There's going to be an ad somewhere in the video. You can't guess where it is. If you guessed said you got it right, you lied.
You have to guess now or else you cheated, because it is a quite predictable ad, I think, this time around. We're also sponsored by birthdays. So happy birthday to everyone whose birthday is today. That's our contractually obligated birthday shout out. And really sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., because we want to tell you about Command Fest Orlando.
Command Fest Orlando is in sunny Orlando, Florida, as the name suggests, at the Hyatt Regency, a really nice venue, and it's gorgeous, and you should come by. We're going to be there.
It's October 20th to the 22nd. Come play with us, and you can have multiple packages to choose from, which you can order on commandfestorlando.com. So get over to the website. You can choose between a 1-day badge, a 3-day badge, or an exclusive VIP badge, which gives you not only the Covert Go Blue Shard token, not only the Edgewall in playmat, but also an access to a VIP sign-in selfie Saturday morning hour. That is the official name of it.
No matter what package you get, though, there's going to be creator games, so you can come play a game with us and just hang out and have a good time.
So yes, we're doing a tier list of like the most played boogeyman style, like staple-y cards, along with Amber here to help us of the original days of Commander, the olden days. We got a tier list, but in order to do a tier list, Amber, I'm sorry, but we got to shrink down a little bit. Ready? Now we're small, and I have the official TM Nitpicking Nerds computer. Amber is sure is hanging out here, isn't she? Now that we have this tier list in front of us without Amber, we can go to the first one, which is Acidic Slime. It's a 5-mana 2/2 with Death Touch. Enters the battlefield, destroy an artifact, enchantment, or land. This used to be all over the place before Reclamation Sage came out.
I definitely remember all this, but it's a little bit too expensive for the types of removal and even creature removal that we're running these days.
Yeah, certain YouTube channels, I think the Nitpicking Nerds were one of them. I can't think of any other ones, but they were really hating on this card, and everyone was like, okay, Nitpicking Nerds, we'll take it out. I just think it's a little slow. Where would you rate it today, though? I mean, like, pretty much all of these cards used to be, like, S tier. Like, everyone was playing them. You saw them all the time. They were scary. But now, I don't know, D tier?
Yeah, it's like either C or D, I think, because I still see it in decks. I'm not like, oh, hey, there are 30 billion better options than that, but I'm not like, ooh, I'm dying to play it.
Yeah, the Death Touch, as a blocker used to be more relevant, and I still don't think that comes up as much. Let's go to a really scary, like, big mana payoff back in the day. This was Capsize. 1 blue instant. Buy back 3. So if you pay 3, it comes back to your hand as it resolves. Bounce a permanent. So you could pay 6 mana to bounce a permanent and then end up with it back in your hand. People were reducing the cost with, like, Goblin Electromancer, or this was one of the go-to, like, oh, they're going to make infinite mana, and then they're going to cast Capsize a million times.
I think this is pretty poop tier nowadays. I obviously don't see it played around, and I think that if you're going to bounce things, or if you want to sink your infinite mana into something, there's a lot better options.
I have not seen this card since, like, 2014. So I think I feel comfortable putting it in poop tier. Capsize, it's not the worst. It's just like, no, maybe it's the worst infinite mana payoff. But it is an infinite mana payoff. It's still, like, going to function if you make infinite mana. Darksteel Ingot, it's indestructible, which is very appealing back in the day. And it makes a mana of any color and nothing else.
I mean, 3-mana rocks. I don't really see them play it anymore, minus the occasional Commander Sphere, or like a Chromatic Lantern, maybe if you want all of your lands to tap for different colors. But other than that, I mean, I don't think Indestructible is that good, especially since we do have exile effects like Farewell.
Yeah, and what didn't help this card is Skyclave Relic, which is strictly better. It is either Darksteel Ingot, or you can pay 6 mana to make 2 copies of it also, so you get 3 of them. It's like, obviously, that's going to see way more play. I feel like, as Capsize is poop tier, let's move Darksteel Ingot to poop tier, because there's way more upgrades for Darksteel Ingot than there are for Capsize.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right, next we have Deadeye Navigator. It's a 6-mana 5/5 with Soul Bond, and you can flicker Soul Bonded creatures for 1 and a blue. So this was like really, really scary. People were talking about Prairie Drake. This was probably, it was like Craterhoof level talked about, and like, this is the win con. Prairie Drake, Deadeye Navigator, or a new card comes out from the set and everyone's like, well, this is really good with Deadeye Navigator. It was all over the place.
I mean, I still think it sees play, and I think it's still an option if you're trying to, like, do a Blink sort of deck and make it go infinite. I don't think it's that bad.
Where do you want to put him, though? B?
Maybe B, and then
B tier?
Yeah, and then if we have to move him down, sure. But
Yeah, room for growth or dropping. I think B tier is a good place to put him right now. He still does stuff. It's just an expensive cost to pay up front. Obviously, I think CDH has shown us what are some of the most powerful things you can do when enough people put their heads behind it. Turns out Denied Navigator was not on that list. It's really weird. Explosive Vegetation now has 8,000 better options. It searches for 2 lands. It's the bare bones effect. It's honestly fine. But we just have like Circuitous Route and Migratory Path and Skyshroud Claim and like Ranger's Path and like 6 other options now that just mean why would I ever play Explosive Vegetation when there's just 16 other options?
I remember I had Explosive Vegetation in my first elf deck. I'm like, this is sick. Turn 4, I'm going to get 2 lands. Like, that's awesome. But I think there's definitely better, as you've named, but it still functions.
Yeah, it is sick. It's just like there's a lot of sicker things. I feel like this could be C.
Yeah, I think this could be our baseline of what we like measure things against, like how you measure McDonald's fast food against all others. Like that's the standard.
Yeah, I mean it's similar to Darksteel Ingot, but I don't think Darksteel Ingot was ever really good. But I do think Explosive Vegetation is like it's playable if you ramp on 4 and then play a 7-drop. Like that's always good. Gilded Lotus is next. It's 5 mana artifact, taps for 3 mana of 1 color. This used to be more impressive. I think Commander used to be more about ramping on turn 5 to then play like a 9-drop on turn 6.
Yeah, just watching this get outclassed by Timeless Lotus is just kind of crazy nowadays, right?
I guess so if you're in Wooburg, but I feel like people just don't play rocks after 3 much anymore. I mean, even Thran Dynamo, poor little buddy. I don't think these are bad cards. I think they just don't see much play.
Yeah, I think there's just the games are going quicker with power creep, so we don't have time to get to that point and use that turn 5 or 4 even to ramp to, with 3 mana.
Yeah, I think there's still some decks that want to play these, so we would keep it in D tier. Next, Harmonize, 2 blue. Wow, 2 green for a sorcery, draw 3. There is Concentrate in blue, which is 2 blue sorcery, draw 3. This is the color shifted version. Green has not always been like the second best color to draw cards. Turns out it used to suck, and this used to be one of the ways to just get a nice burst, guaranteed, and maybe Commander had some less synergy going on back then.
I mean, we have better nowadays with things when you have creatures come in or you cast a spell, like draw a card, and this is fine, but I don't think it's great because it's a one-time effect, and we have so many draw cards type effects stapled onto permanents nowadays.
Yeah, if Poop tier has been like phased out completely, I would maybe want to put this in D tier. I'm never really going to recommend anyone play it unless you have some kind of green spells deck, but that's pretty rare. Next is Hinder, and I really like this one. Hinder is 1 blue, counter target spell. Its controller puts it on the bottom of their library when it gets countered instead of just in the graveyard. And this is only a former staple because the commander, put it back to the zone rule. Command zone rule used to be different, and if you countered a commander, with Hinder, it would just go on the bottom of their deck, and there's nothing they could do about it. So this was probably super unfun. It just tucked commanders. It was insane.
I mean, this is pretty awful nowadays. If it's easy to get stuff back from the library, and we're not really playing 3 mana counter spells, or at least we're trying not to.
Well, nothing's really going to end up in the library, or my commander's not going to end up in the library because it doesn't work anymore. I don't really care. Like, if you counter my spell, sometimes it's better to go in the library than the graveyard. Sometimes it's better to go in the graveyard than the library. But it's a 3 mana counter with like no frills. The upside is now irrelevant because Commander's different. Next is Insurrection. It's 8 mana sorcery. Gain control of all creatures. Untap them, and you can swing with them. Commander used to be way more board stally. This was one of the cards. I like vividly remember an old Command Zone, like before they had video, when they were just an audio podcast, they were talking about like the best ways to end the game. It's like, they're just going to play Insurrection.
Yeah, we saw this reprinted in Commander Masters, and that was definitely a throwback, but we have Mob Rule now, and
Mob Rule's pretty good. I don't know. I'd probably put this at like a B.
Yeah,
you're not going to win
fine.
the game. You'll probably kill somebody. That's what I feel like, right?
Yeah, it's definitely good for at least a turn, but I don't know. It's fine. I don't mind it.
Yeah, if you play like sack effects, it could be really strong. You like take out a player and then sacrifice all the other creatures. It could be pretty good. Kakusho, the Evening Star, is a 6 mana 5/5. When it dies, it drains all your opponents for 5, but you don't gain 5. You gain life equal to the total life loss, which would be 15, assuming everybody loses 5 and there's 3 opponents. This card used to be banned. It banned as Commander, I think, or just banned in general.
I mean, I still see it flickered nowadays. Or not flickered, but I still see it in, like, recursion decks. So yeah. I think it's a good target still. I'd put it in A. Like, I'd put it higher up there than Deadeye or Insurrection.
I think it was banned in Commander, banned as Commander, and then they removed that, and they're like, all right, just put Kakusho wherever. And I don't really think it's that big of an issue, but this card, it just is like a nice history point. I think A is fine. It still sees some play. It's a nice drain effect. It's a 30-point life swing when you sack it?
Yeah, and it's a good target to reanimate.
Yeah, it's decent.
There's definitely more scary ones, like the Toxrills and stuff.
Yeah,
but
like as far as this list goes, I think Kakusho's about as high as you're going to get. Croson Grip is next. Card I've never personally liked, but it's tuna green, instant, got split second, so it can't be countered or responded to in most cases, and destroys an artifact or enchantment.
This is such a meta call. I used to play it in a deck because there was so much counter magic running around, and that split second really mattered. But with things like Nature's Claim, the 3 mana is a lot to hold up.
I find that personally, saving 2 mana every single time I cast the spell is more relevant than having the spell be unrespondable to like 10% of the time. That even feels generous. Maybe like 5, maybe 1 in 20 times it'll matter. I would just rather pay 1 mana. I think it's kind of gotten like efficiency crept where, people were like, just play cheaper cards, just like do this. And it still sees some play though. As much as I don't like it, it's probably still a C.
Yeah, I think C is fine. I mean, it's been outclassed, but it's not unusable nowadays.
Yeah, and it can be a meta call. If you've got people only playing Necropotence and like Aetherflux Reservoir, maybe. My other thing is, people always say it stops Aetherflux Reservoir. It's like, well, kind of. If I'm at 51 life and I cast Aetherflux Reservoir, I have priority. So if I just pay 50 life, you can't stop that.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, it's such a meta call, but I think in the long run out of everyone you're playing against, it probably that effect can be done better by something else.
Yeah, there's some things. Let's go to Lifecrafter's Bestiary, as Amber says another hello. It's a 3-mana artifact, upkeep, you scry 1, and then when you cast a creature spell, you can pay green and draw a card. This card was sweet. It was so good. It was one of the first effects we ever got like this, that is like, green decks, play creature, draw a card. And every green deck was like, heck yes. This card it's honestly not even a bad card. But right after that, a couple of years after that, we got Guardian Project, Beast Whisperer, and the Great Hedge, and then everybody forgot this thing existed.
I really like this card. I have this in a couple of our $20 budget decks, and I think you do too. And It's still effective. I would put it as usable still, especially if you're going for a certain budget, and I'd put it in maybe B or A.
I like A for this as soon as I can get around Amber's paw, which is on the trackpad.
Why are you circling?
She's circling to try to lay down. So yeah, I like A a lot for Lifecrafters. Still a playable card. Just like it's not explosive vegetation. It's like 6 steps better, where there's only like 4 or 5 better options, but they push this card out of it. Mimic Vat, 3-mana artifact, imprint. When a creature dies, you can exile it, and then you put all the other cards exiled with Mimic Vat back. So you can only ever exile 1 creature at a time, and then you can pay 3 and tap it and make a copy with haste that dies at the end of the turn. This is so clunky. You need everything to go right for this.
Yeah, I'm really trying to figure out what I would do with it nowadays and like what I would be trying to copy, and I need 6 mana, and am I trying to get like triggers when they enter the battlefield and die, or like what am I trying to do with this? I'm
really not sure. These days I feel like this is a D. If you need to make wacky tokens, it's a chance to make a token copy, but there's so many ways now. There's like a million ways to do that now. Just like there's a million ways to build decks, but we're going to use Moxfield.com. We're not going to use Redacted. Do you see Redacted's logo on this tier list? It's not here because that would be in poop tier.
It wouldn't even be in poop tier. It would be so much farther down, and Moxfield, I think, is the only grade that we might give an S.
I would give an S, easy S to Moxfield. If there was an S+, I would consider that. I knew something would make S on this tier list. Yeah, Moxfield makes it very easy to build your decks. It's the deck building website we always use. You can go follow us on there to stay up to date with all of our wacky brews. Mia just uploaded all of her decks onto it, which you could not have seen a week ago.
It was super easy to copy them over. You can actually duplicate decks right on the deck itself. It's like 2 button clicks, and that's what makes Moxfield really awesome to use.
I don't know if we'll see a card outperform Moxfield, but we'll try. Nevin Rolls Disc, 4-mana artifact, enters tapped, and you can pay 1 and tap it. Does not sacrifice itself to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Really weird card.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see artifact-based board wipes being played anymore. I have one friend who plays Perilous Vault, but it's more of a meme than anything else.
Yeah, Perilous Vault, Oblivion Stone, those are other ones that come to mind. This used to be, like, look, back before we had a trillion white board wipes, a trillion different white things, a trillion ways to answer artifacts. This was one of the go-to cards. It also didn't kill Planeswalkers, so people were happy to have theirs stick around. Planeswalkers mattered a lot more back then. And there's only one Planeswalker on this list, though. Where do you like Larry Nevin's disc?
D, maybe?
D? Top of D, perhaps? It's still a playable card.
Yeah. Like,
Maybe
I think
C.
D's fine. Okay,
Maybe C. Cause
Bottom
like,
of C, though?
it like combos with, like, Avacyn, because it destroys itself, it doesn't sacrifice itself. So if it's indestructible,
Yeah.
you got something going. Next is Phyrexian Arena. You draw a card and you lose a life on your upkeep, and it's 3-mana enchantment. Thoughts?
I mean, the audience knows how we feel about this. It's a lot to just slap down for 3 mana and do nothing till the turn comes around. And it could just be a complete fizzle of your turn if someone kills it before you get to your next turn.
Yeah, the more time you have with it, the better it is. And that's why it was so much more played back in the day, because Commander games probably went like 3 to 4 more turns on average, just because of things were more board stall-y and like slower. There was less commander-specific releases, so they weren't printing busted commanders. You would have to check standard sets, which had 6 legendary creatures, to see if one of them was brewable. And most of them were not even designed for Commander at all.
Though I really like the look of the reprint in the Phyrexia All-Be One, or whichever one that was for...
The Vraska one, where she's like...
Yeah, there has been a better version of this card, and it was in Lord of the Rings, so... I don't know, it's definitely been outclassed, and we don't really like playing it.
Yeah, I like D. I don't know, it feels like a little bit below Explosive Vegetation, because I would recommend variants of that card, but I don't know if I'd recommend Phyrexian Arena. I'd rather just play Night's Whisper these days. Oh, here's a Night's Whisper variant. It's Wreath of Bones. 3 mana, scry 2, draw 2, lose 2.
God, I remember throwing this in a bunch of decks.
When it came out, it was so hype.
And I still play it in some budget decks, I think, so I think it's still usable.
The funniest thing is, I remember people loving this card when it came out, but like Night's Whisper and Sign in Blood already existed. This came out after those. Maybe it was just like there wasn't as much of an EDH rec, type resource that everybody could see. And so when this was super accessible in Theros in 2013, people jumped all over it. But I wouldn't really recommend this at all. I have it in a deck for nostalgia because I love it.
Yeah, I'd say maybe bottom of C, top of D.
Let's give it...
I think it's better than Phyrexian Arena, though.
I think it's close. I don't know.
I think it's better, not by much, but...
Let's put it above just to trigger all the Phyrexian Arena lovers out there, the stands.
Okay.
But I am unsure of which one is actually better. Next is another funny rules change type card. It's Rift Sweeper. It's a 2-mana 2/2. Enters the battlefield. You shuffle a face-up card in exile into its owner's library. You guessed it. Commanders used to just be in exile. The command zone wasn't like as refined as it is right now. It was kind of just a place where your cards were. And Rift Sweeper was like, you don't even have to cast your commander. I'm not going to counter it. I'm not going to put it on the bottom when you cast it. I'm just going to shuffle it into your deck on turn 2. What are you going to do about that?
I mean, there's things nowadays to get people's commanders stuck. There's like Mirror of Life trapping and then just blowing up the mirror.
That is pretty funny.
There's keeping, it on the field as an elk or turning it face up. I think I did that recently with your Tristani deck.
Yeah, you can turn it face down.
Yeah.
As a thing. There's other ways to ruin commanders players' lives. This is not one anymore. It just doesn't work. The command zone isn't like a valid zone this thing looks at. So obviously it's in poop tier. I just thought it was really funny. Amber loves Rift Sweeper. Back in the day, Amber used to Rift Sweeper everyone. She used to play it in her red decks and rule 0 it.
Amber is powerful. I don't know how you get consistent land drops with 12 lands in an entire deck, but somehow she does it.
She only plays 12 land stacks and it always works out for her. Next goes Scavenging Ooze, one of the first exclusive commander cards that were released in the first ever precons, and it saw legacy play, and it was weird because we hadn't really had that before. And this is 1 and a green for a 2/2 green exile card from a graveyard. If it was a creature, you get gain a life and you get a counter on it. This was a complete auto include staple in every green deck.
I still see Scooz around. I see him floating around, and I'm like, he still has utility.
I think it's a really good card. I think it's S tier. It's basically just you could put it in any green deck. I lately have not as much, but as soon as you have any synergy with life gain or counters, get that thing in there. It's really disruptive. Graveyard players are going to have a hard time as long as this thing is out.
Yeah, use it. I'll put it in one, and I'll just disrupt your entire graveyard.
All my decks. It'll disrupt everything I've ever done. Sorin Markov. Have you ever seen a Sorin Markov in play?
Maybe once, but not any time recently.
This was easily in the top 5 boogeyman cards of the format. It's a 6-mana planeswalker. It has a bunch of bad abilities, but you can -3 it right away to set target player's life total to 10. So everyone used to hate this thing, and it was kind of one of the first cards I remember being rule 0'd out of the format per se, because it was very unfun. Setting your life to 10 was, I guess, considered just basically a death sentence. Earlier in the Nitpicking Nerds, I was whatever. Now I'm still pretty whatever, but I do acknowledge it was a house back in the early 2010s.
Yeah, I think with games that are shorter nowadays, it is easier to win before that comes down, so I wouldn't be as scared about it. And there's also other ways to kill faster. So sometimes it like doesn't even come down to life, right? If you're trying to deck someone or get them with commander damage.
Yeah, where do we want to put this? It's not poop.
I think it's, I mean, C. I mean, it's
Bottom of C.
Yeah.
Maybe right above the disc.
Sure.
You can still set somebody's life total to 10, and it'll be annoying for them.
Yeah, they
I don't
won't
think
have
it's
fun.
Yeah, I don't think it's a death sentence, but I think it will probably cause them to have a lot less fun in the game. It's a lot of pressure. Temple of the False God. I bet you know what Temple of the False God does.
Yeah, oh boy. My friend always manages it to play it on turn 5 and get that 2 extra mana, and it's in every precon, and it never works for me.
It's never really worked for me either, not consistently. I think it's a trap, but I think in the past when games were slower and there was more of this ramp, more setup, like when you're playing Gilded Lotus on turn 5 to ramp into your 10 drop, I think Temple of the False God makes more sense. So I totally get where people were coming from. Nowadays, though, we got to be consistent, right? We got to just put it in poop tier. We never recommend it.
Wizards, please stop printing it in the precons.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done with it. Amber sees Temple of the False God and she laughs because she's going to destroy all your other lands and you're never going to tap for mana at all. Next, got Vindicate. 3 mana sorcery, destroy target permanent. It used to be a catch-all. Used to be a legacy card. I think a lot of that hype came from this is C's play in all the older formats because it's so good. It's such a catch-all removal spell. And then we just got 8 things that are better.
Yeah, I don't love the sorcery speed, but I do love the fact that it can pick whatever type of permanent that you want. So I still think if you're doing budget or something, it could be playable.
Yeah, I can't believe this card's a budget card. Did not used to be. I feel like
I think B. Really? D?
Oh, you were going to put it in B tier?
Well, okay,
Dang.
maybe not.
Let's meet in the middle then. Let's do C tier.
Okay, maybe bottom of C. I was like, maybe B's a little high because I was thinking about it as I said it.
Yeah.
But
because Anguish Unmaking, I think, is the card that killed this for me.
Yeah.
I'll give up the land part for a huge upgrade, which is the instant speed on it. And you also get Exile, too, which is another big upgrade. I don't like 3 mana sorcery kill spells. We don't really play those.
Yeah, I was just thinking about more of the fact that it is budget, and since we do play a lot of budget, it could be an option. But now that the other budget cards that are creeping down for removal, like Path to Exile, is creeping down as a budget bomb.
Swords to Plowshare is almost a budget bomb. Yeah, budget is not as much of a consideration. Whisper Silk Cloak. It's 5 mana total. You equip and the creature gets Shroud and is unblockable, which is everything you wanted back in the more battle cruisery days. You can't interact with me. There's less board wipes running around, and I'm just going to hit you a bunch of times with my 10/10 with no abilities.
I had this in my first Kaleo, working.
Yeah,
and,
I remember a bunch of Kaleo decks.
I was so excited to play this, and now I'm like, wow, that's a lot of mana to sink in before I actually get that effect.
I think there's more targeted removal now, so people are kept honest. You can't just suit up an unkillable creature. When you spend 5 mana on this and they respond to the equip and blow your thing up with a Path to Exile, you feel pretty bad about it. So where would you put it? It's a card that you can play. It has uses.
D, maybe?
D tier? Maybe here-ish feels about right.
Sure.
Yeah, you gotta feel it in your heart. Just like when your deck's a 7.7. Wrath of God. 4 mana, blow up all the creatures. This used to be one of the best white board wipes because there wasn't as many to choose from. There still were a lot, but 4 mana, unconditional, blow them up. I mean, I guess in this case, Wrath of God says they can't be regenerated too. So it was a lot more appealing. There's just, I believe you when I say there are 50 more options now.
Yeah, I mean, Vanquish the Horde, amazing.
Farewell, just
Exile.
so many different options for it, even though we only listed 2. So
Yeah.
there's infinite 5 mana Wraths that aren't that good. But Wrath of God still kind of stands the test of time. I think it's still a playable card.
Yeah, I think the fact that it is 4 mana is what makes it pretty playable. And if you're putting it into some sort of Avacyn type deck and you're trying to destroy, and that's the key word there, destroy it and not exile everything, then it could be somewhat playable.
You know what? As how this tier list is shaping up, I really like it in A tier, right here. It's totally fine. Just you could upgrade your deck a little bit by tweaking it and maybe cutting this for Vanquish the Horde or something. Wormcoil Engine, 6 mana, 6/6 lifelink, Death Touch, dies into a 3/3 Death Touch and a 3/3 lifelink. It's got artifact synergies, but it used to be straight up auto include. You're playing Commander, you could just put Wormcoil Engine in your deck.
God, Wormcoil Engine, that's one of the key cards.
And it was
back in the
good,
day.
yeah.
And I still don't think it's per se the word. I can definitely, I have seen it in some decks, and it was reprinted in Brothers War, and it was still a high price at that point, and it still is pretty high of a price. I still think it's above $6 to $10. I still think it's pretty high.
For me, this card is definitely above C. So it's either an S, A, or B, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm thinking maybe A tier.
I'd say B or A. I definitely don't think it's Scoo's level.
Okay, let's put it in the bottom of A, because in the lower powered metas, it still sees play. Lifelink can be relevant when people are not comboing off, which is a fair share of Commander games. So I like Wormcoil. I've played it a bit, and it's overperformed, like in regards to my thoughts on it before, like years ago, which were like, this card stinks. It's too expensive. It's actually okay.
Yeah, I have definitely stolen other people's with some like weird steal effects, and I'm never mad to have it on my side, but 6 mana is a lot, so I don't think I'd put it in my deck unless it had complete synergy.
All right, and this next card, if you have seen it in a deck, that deck was made in 2012. This is Yavimaya Elder, 3 mana for a 2/1. You can pay 2 and sack it to draw a card, and when it dies, you search for 2 basics and put them into your hand. Amber, you wouldn't even know what a basic land is. Settle down. What do you think about this? Have you ever seen this card?
No.
I know you've been playing less than me.
Yeah.
Or you started playing more recently.
I started playing in Shadows, and no, I've never seen this. It's been completely outclassed.
Yeah,
even
I don't.
Then.
Even back then, I remember this was like a borderline, and I was like, really? And I think I missed the boat a little bit. But before that, I think it was like a green card advantage engine. It was like 5 mana, draw 3. Just that 2 of them were basic lands. I respect you, Yavimaya Elder, but I would never, in my right mind, tell anyone to play you these days. I'll put it like right here. And I really enjoyed this, and there are a lot more Commander staples. If you want to see like an episode 2, totally let us know, because I love going back down memory lane. And Mia, what video should they watch if they're hungry for more tier lists?
If they want to watch more tier lists, we actually did one that compares modern staples in Commander.
Yes, the banned modern cards in Commander. Amber wants to wish you a happy birthday if it's your birthday. That's the fact of the day.